Shut up and sit down.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles Podcast. This week, John and I talk with Billy Phillips from Hunt Urban. He is fresh back from a family saddle hunting trip to Africa. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk to him about a little bit, about the African style hunting, which has never been a real draw to John or I, and just kind of talk to choosing a hunt and things like that. And then we kind of go down a whole bunch of different rabbit holes and talk about, everything from crossbows, traditional archery, and kind of end up hunting in general, kind of like what it means to us as far as the traditional side, the tradition and why we kind of continue doing what we're doing. Is it for the animals, hunting versus killing type thing? You kind of end up with kind of recounting some of our favorite hunts from each one of us. And, it might be surprising kind of the answers that we have, because none of them involve our largest animal killed. It's more about sharing memories with others. And I think as a hunting community, we need to get into more of sharing that experience with others and getting more people involved and kind of looking past, the size of the animal, the equipment, and things like that. So this is really a fun podcast. We met Billy down at ATA, and it was just a great guy and super interesting. Lots of archery background. So it's a great podcast, a fun one to listen to, a long one. But thanks for tuning in for sure. It's a great podcast, fun one to record for sure. But also, if you're going to be up at the Total Archery Challenge at Boyne, like I said, we are having a little cookout Saturday evening. You can find us back behind the practice range. We're going to be back there. I'm just kind of cooking out, hanging out with the guys from the Huntivore podcast, and it's going to be a great time. It sounds like there's going to be a pretty good turnout. We've had some real good feedback off of social media and talking on the last podcast. So if you're going to be up at the Total Archery Challenge at Boyne Mountain this year, definitely come check us out. We're going to be there, from Thursday till Monday. So swing by and say hi and tell us what we can do better to make the podcast better for you as a listener. And for you as a listener, as always, check out our affiliates in Gearak, XOP Gear, and Servicide. Check out everything that they've got going on there, and you can use code Chronicles to save yourself some money at all of those spots. Follow us along on Facebook and Instagram, and if you haven't checked out our Patreon page and you like what we're doing, go over there. And if you enjoy the podcast and you like what you're doing and you can spare $5, it helps us to do things like go to the Total Archery Challenge and kind of, put on the cookout and everything that we're doing, and the cost for the podcast. But if not, no big deal. Just tell a friend, follow along and say, hey, listen to this episode, or, refer us to somebody. And, that's all we can ask for, is just give us some feedback and let us know, how we're doing. But I think you guys are really going to enjoy this podcast, because Billy is a super interesting guy, and what a fun one to record. So without any further ado, enjoy the podcast. Thanks for listening.
It's a song of my people. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with it.
All right.
Okay, there it is. Oh, man, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Just started recording per our guest request. He said all the fun stuff happens before you start recording on these podcasts. And so today it's Adam and John here with, I don't even know how we book these guests. He is a urban hunter extraordinaire, fresh back from a saddle hunting safari with a wife and daughters, and he has a penchant for crossbows, and he's into birds.
Yeah, kind of crazy. I mean, like, and the crossbow thing, really. I mean, I actually shoot trad gear. I have a stalker recurve. Matthews Helium is my compound that I shoot, but just recently picked up a mission crossbow, and it was primarily for my family to use, because it's, I mean, my 8-year-old can use it, and my wife can use it, and all my 100 kids in between can use it. I started shooting it, and I was pretty impressed. I mean, it's still archery, right? But there's an accuracy level that is rifle-like. I mean, pellet gun rifle-like. You know, where you the trajectory isn't. You know, I guess you can shoot 100 yards with them, have nice groups, but I mean, it's still archery where, you know, I like to limit my shots. And coming from a suburban hunting background, I try to limit my shots to 20 yards, especially on deer, whitetail deer, in suburban settings. So compound is more than enough. You know, it's plenty. I mean, most people within 20 yards, 15 to 20 yards of the compound are just deadly. Crossbow is almost overkill in that situation. But yeah, I mean, I started shooting this mission crossbow, and I really like it.
Well, so for the listener, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and give a little bit of a background, and we'll kind of bust your balls from there, I guess.
That's going to be easy to do, man. Well, background is I have a lot of things on my plate. From I bow hunt in urban settings to help, you know, control the population of deer. Probably seen me on Hunt Urban with Taylor Chamberlain before. I'm into falconry. That's a time-consuming part of my life, but luckily I try to fit that in after the main part of bow season, the middle of winter, where it's kind of a little more difficult to hunt. A lot of family going on. I have 4 daughters. My 1-year-old obviously doesn't hunt, but the other 3 hunt. My wife hunts. We just got back from a trip to Africa. I was the first saddle hunter in Africa. Took my tethered saddle over there, had a blast. I was the PH for my kids and my wife a lot of the times. So I didn't get to hunt as much as I wanted to, but I did get to get out and hunt, shot a couple things, had a blast. I guess my background is basically that, you know, from anything from urban hunting to Sika deer hunting in Maryland in the swamps of Dorchester County. I'm just an outdoorsman. I like to do as much as I can, and I think that gets me into trouble a little bit. I think my biggest problem is that I want to do so many things, and I'm just so busy. I mean, I know you guys are talking about in one of your recent podcasts, talking about the bass challenge, the yak and bass challenge. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, man, I'd love to do that. I'm like, can I fit another thing on my plate right now? I don't think I can.
Yeah. And it's funny because, you know, like I said, you know, for the listener who doesn't always they're not privy to, you know, there's usually 20 minutes or a half hour of just bullshitting before you get on the podcast, and a lot of the stuff is lost in there. So to go straight into talking about this, I was thinking man, this guy's straight from jiu-jitsu practice, and I know his daughters are into jiu-jitsu, and that was one of the things I was going to ask John is, like, you know, is that something that you've ever considered? I mean, you hear, you know, you can't turn on a podcast. I mean, it's like saddle hunting or hunting from a kayak or something. It's like, you know, that's what you're supposed to be doing: lift, hunt, eat, you know, paddleboard, you know, jiu-jitsu. It's all of those things, and it's something that I would like to do. And I kind of like, in following like what you're doing, I love watching, you know, your daughters doing that, because I've got a 3-year-old and she is just a ball of fire. And for you know, I think that to be able to channel some of that energy into, you know, some discipline and something positive, but then I'm in the same boat, is like, man, do I need another hobby?
So much on your plate already.
I got enough shit going on.
Yeah. And you know, you you have to pick and choose your battles. And, but I look at it this way is all of these opportunities that we have, because that's how I look at all these things, whether it's falconry or jiu-jitsu or bow hunting, it's going to Africa. I'm so blessed. We have all these opportunities. We can do whatever we want. I mean, we don't live in a lot of these other countries where they don't have the opportunities to literally do whatever we want. I'm very fortunate. I'm blessed. I've got a lifestyle that but my wife and I have really worked. Excuse me. We really worked hard to set ourselves up for this. I didn't realize it was going to be as busy as it is, but you do pick and choose your battles. I mean, do I get to? Am I the best archer that I could be? No, I'm not, because I'm doing other things. Am I the best fisherman that I would like to be? No, I'm not. I love fly fishing. But right now, if I try to do a roll cast right now, I would definitely pierce my ear. 100%. Absolutely 100% pierced. Maybe tongue. I might even pierce my tongue. I don't know. I wish I could do those things more. I tell people all the time, I wish I had like a 50-hour day. Really pack everything I want to do into one day. But you have to pick and choose, and you hit something really important when you talked about your 3-year-old. She's a ball of fire. I can tell already you want to put your energy into her. You want to focus her energy. You're interested in her, and if she never wants to get into something that you like, and that's okay, go along with her. And I've noticed that with my kids too. There's some times where they want to go a different direction than I want them to go, and sometimes you have to go along with them, just support them and just go along with them because they are a different person. They're not you. They're a totally different person. You just have to, ride, take the ride with them.
Yeah, just support them in what their interests are. You just got to support them. Like my kids are all older. My youngest is 15, and my boy's 15, and I have a 17-year-old daughter, 21-year-old daughter, and a 25-year-old daughter. So they're all, my oldest daughter, she tried hunting with me a couple times. She loved going fishing with me. She was just telling me that the other day. She's like, "Man, those were the best naps ever, Dad." But they were all in sports and stuff. My 21-year-old right now is actually over in Australia. She's studying abroad, but she's kind of like a little hippie. She started eating environmental studies and sustainability, and so she definitely isn't into killing things. So,
does she eat things with a face? That's the big question.
Yes, she will, but
maybe once in a while.
Actually, when she was little, she was pretty savage. Like see a squirrel in the backyard, kill him, Dad, kill him. Or shoot the chipmunks, and she'd have a little pile of them that were getting in the shed. But then after, I don't know, when she started getting into her teenage years, she kind of went a different way. So,
and my kids are young, and I expect them to change. I expect them to do different things. But I want to give them, just like you did. We want to give our kids everything that we can give them. I can't give my kids, and like you can't give your daughter environmental hippie type of perspective on life, right? I know you, John. I don't think you can do that very well. No. But you can support her in that. But as growing up, you were able to give her, your perspective on life, and that turned her into the person she is. And that I think that's what I want to do with my kids, and that's the whole reason I took them to Africa. My wife and I, by the way, if you ever want to go to Africa, go to one of the SCI banquets, especially one of the local chapters. That's what I do. I go to the Mid-Atlantic Bowhunter chapter of SCI, and I buy these hunts on these live auctions. You get them for steals. I mean, steals. I don't even want to say what we bought. A 2-person hunt for. Each person got 3 animals, and it was well below even our airfare, what we paid for that hunt. So my wife and I bought this hunt 2 years ago, and we decided to go, and it was just going to be her and I. And then my wife got pregnant, and it was planned. And we said, man, we were going to have to put this off. We can't go. We're going to have to go the following year. And then we're like, we've got a 1-year-old at this point. How are we going to go and leave her back home? Because my parents actually went with us. They stayed a few days with us, and then they went on another hunt for roan and hippo and crocodile and all kinds of stuff. They hunt internationally all the time. So we're thinking, what are we going to do, and how are we going to deal with having all these kids? And finally, my wife and I said, look, let's see if we can find dates that will work for us where we can get the lowest airfare and take all of us. And we did. At first, man, I tell you what, it was looking like it was going to be like $2,000 a person. And I'm like, look, I can't. That's not many people can swing $2,000 a person. I've got 4 kids.
Right, and one of those people is 1 year old. I mean, $2,000,
an infant, right?
Yeah, it's not going to.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
Hers would have been cheaper, but it was just stupid. So, but we were looking in June and July. So we started talking to people, did a little research. They said go in the off-peak season, in the spring and our fall. So we decided to go in April, and we'd said, screw it. We're gonna take the baby. I didn't want to leave her by herself. I just didn't want to split up the family. Family's core, we're close. If one of us is going, we might as well all go. So we decided to do it. And the week and a half before, we all started getting sick, got the flu, and it just passed through the family. And it was one of those bad flus that's, I'm not going to get into detail, but it was everything, that you can imagine would be terrible. And you do not want to be on a flight. That's what we had. My oldest daughter was the first one to get it. We all cleared it. And it was 3 days before we were going to leave. It was the Friday before Easter Sunday. We went up to my in-laws. My daughter got sick again. My oldest daughter got sick again. And I mean, terribly sick. She lost like 12 pounds. She only weighs 110. And it was bad. So Easter Sunday, we're leaving on Monday. Easter Sunday, she's sick as a dog. And we're going, I don't really know what to do. We can't leave her here. If somebody, I didn't want to leave her sick and, with my in-laws or anything like that. So we were thinking maybe one of us stays and then one of us goes to Africa with 3 other kids. Like, well, that's not going to work. It was like, we're panicking at this point. Well, luckily we had gone to a travel consultant and got to get our shots and everything like that. Yeah, tetanus shots. Yeah, I love them. So we went and got those, and they said, hey, you should take some of this medicine. It's like helps for traveling diarrhea and nausea and things like that. And I'm looking at it and going, just me, my personality. I'm like, I don't need that garbage. My wife's like, absolutely, let's get some of that. Thank God, she's a genius. She got it, gave it to my daughter, stopped everything. The next day we got up and I'm like, all right, Lily, how do you feel? I mean, it's like touch and go. How do you feel? We're getting on a plane in 4 hours. How do you feel? She's like, I feel pretty good. Let's do it. So we gambled and went. She was good the whole way. We fueled up in Ghana. And on the second flight down to Johannesburg, my second oldest daughter threw up in my wife's breakfast right on her tray. Filled the tray. Bad, right? I mean, it's like all over her blanket that she had, all over her sweatshirt. And I'm like, oh, fuck. This is just not going very well. And I was able to get a trash bag and wrap all the stuff in the trash bag and throw it in. The baby was great. Cried a little bit here and there, but, it was good. I'm like, oh, my God, what are we going to do? Luckily, I think it was just motion sickness. She wasn't feeling ill. So we get there, we land, and we're just exhausted. We're like, let's go. We had to stay over with a layover in Johannesburg before we went to Kimberley. And we get out, get through security and everything. And my wife says, did you get the bag that had the barf clothes in? I said, hell no, I didn't get that bag. She said, but my blanket's in there that my mother gave me when I was a baby. And Riley's favorite sweatshirt's in that bag. And I'm like, so? What do you mean? So she's a little bit disappointed. I said, you know what, let me go back. And I went back and I said, hey, 45 minutes ago we landed. Can I get this bag? And they're like, look, everything's been thrown away. It's gone. It's done. And I said, would $100 find that bag? And I'll be damned if 20 minutes later they didn't bring that barf bag to me. So that was the end of the bad stuff that happened on the trip. When we got there, everything turned around. And my kids had the best time of their lives. They sang songs. They made up songs about warthogs, which they called rhino pigs instead of calling them warthogs. And they made up a game where we had to, while we're driving around through this monstrous area that it took you hours to drive across this place. It was incredible. But we pick out animals, just go on drives and pick out animals. Like most of the time we weren't even hunting, we were playing. It was so much fun. Drive around and the kids would, if you saw an animal, if you saw it first, you got points for a certain animal. And, Gem's buck might be 5 points and a impala might be 10 points. And if you saw an eland, you won. That's like you win the game. That's the animal that, it was difficult to find. If you saw it, you won the game for the day. But if you saw a warthog and you called it a warthog, you would lose all of your points for the day. Only way to get your points back was to shit your pants. It was literally the rule of the game. So if you reached out and said warthog, well, either you're out of the game and you're not playing anymore, or get the wet wipes out. So you had to call them rhino pigs the whole time. And they made up things like Rhino Pig Road for these pathways that we would always drive down. And there's this one big water hole that they called Rhino Pig Lake. And believe me, it looked like a Rhino Pig Lake. It was a mud puddle, right? But the point is that they just had the best time of their lives, to the point where when we left, they were crying in the airport. Now, we went to Disney World 8 months ago. They did not cry when we left. They had a blast. They had a great time. They did not cry when we left Disney World. They cried when we left South Africa. It's so much fun. They wanted to move. They're ready to, like, hey, can we move here? Can we buy a place here? Can you guys they were doing everything they could to figure out how we could go back immediately. It was an incredible trip. And that's something that the 1-year-old obviously will not remember. My 8-year-old will remember bits and pieces. She'll remember a lot of it. The older two girls are going to remember they're going to have those memories for the rest of their lives. And as soon as we got back, they pulled out their piggy banks, made a jar, wrote Africa on it, and started saving money because they want to go back next year.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So with the one of the things, and I've talked to a few of my friends that hunt, Africa's like on their bucket list of hunts. It sounds like you or your kids as well are brought up around maybe a culture of big game hunting or African hunting. My grandpa had been on a couple different safaris, and he's a rifle hunter, not a bow hunter at all.
Mm-hmm.
And had traveled all over the world, and it just and I've heard and read a couple of different things where there's the ones where you just drive around and shoot or sit on a water hole all day, or different styles of hunts. So what's the draw to hunting in Africa for you? And was this your first trip hunting in Africa? It sounds like it was an amazing trip with the family, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you can throw hunting in there, all the more better,
so,
right?
Yes. So this was my third trip. And the very first time I went, we only went in, sat on water holes, strictly bow hunting. We only sat water holes. And it's kind of like antelope hunting out west. You sit there and you wait. But the difference is, instead of just antelope coming in, think about every North American game species that we have could possibly come into that water hole. So that was different. That was incredible. The very first time I went, and that was totally fine. I had a blast. The second time I went, it was a combination of that and some spot and stalk, things like that. This time, I had a little bit more knowledge. My advice would be this. You need to know exactly what kind of a hunt that you want before you go. And when I say that, I mean, like, do you just want to sit over a water hole? Do you just want to drive around and shoot from 500 yards with a rifle? Do you want to just spot and stalk? Or do you want to go put a loincloth on and use a spear and try to hunt down a buffalo? You really have to know what you want, so you're not going to be disappointed. Now, but you also have to understand that the more difficult you make it for yourself, the fewer animals you're going to get. Your PH is going to say, look, you're going to make me more money if we ride around the truck and just blast animals from the truck with a rifle. But your PH also, at least the ones that I've gone with, they know that that's not what they would consider hunting and what I would consider hunting. I would like to go with an atlatl, and go all out. But I know that if I went there for 10 days with an atlatl, not being very good with it, I would probably fail pretty miserably and, maybe even get bit by a poisonous snake or something. So you just have to, you have to, understand what you want out of that trip and what kind of a hunt you want. A lot of us on the East and you guys in the Midwest, a lot of us are tree stand hunters, saddle hunters. So it's pretty natural for us to maybe sit a water hole in a blind, or I took a saddle this time. So it was so natural. I climbed into these acacia trees. I'm in a saddle. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like I'm hunting at home, but I've got giant freaking antelope coming in. And so I was very comfortable. Excuse me. I was very comfortable in those situations. So I kind of set it up the way that I wanted. Now, you also have the opportunity to go do spot and stalks where they'll kind of mix in you drive, you spot from driving, and then you get down and you walk and you stalk and try to get within bow range. And look, the eyesight is, just like any other, some of them are even better. The whitetail or antelope or anything else. They're all antelope over there. Their eyesight's incredible. If you screw up, you're cooked. You're not getting a shot. Your 4-hour stalk or even 20-minute stalk, whatever it is cooked. So, you can make the hunt as difficult as you want because the rules on hunting are, I don't want to say not different, but I don't even want to say lax. It's just, you can hunt them the way you want. They even have some of these really big game ranches have call hunts where, you can literally just sit down. They give you a swivel chair and you've got a long, super long range rifle, and you just shoot as many of a specific animal that they need to remove from the herds. You shoot as many as you can in a day, every day. Or you can go and straight stick bow, go in there with, flint napped arrows if you want, and spot and stalk barefoot if you want. It's up to you. And I think, so my advice on going to Africa, if you want to do it, know what kind of a hunt you want to do. And if collecting animals are important to you, then the hunting should be a little bit easier. Don't expect to go over there, spot and stalk, and shoot 6 or 8 animals in a week. Can you shoot 6 or 8 white-tailed deer in a week by spotting and stalking them? Because I know I can. That's pretty damn good. So I think people need to manage their expectations when they go over, but set up the hunt the way that they want to do it.
And so, I guess, how was, you said it's the first saddle in Africa. How was it received with the professional hunters or the foreign the natives, whatever, however you want to call them? What do they think of it? Is it something that has made it over there yet for them to be aware of?
Dude, they had no idea. Absolutely no idea. They were expecting me to pull out a tree stand. And I did pull out because I used the Predator platform, and they're like, how are you going to stand on that? And they looked at it like, you can't fit that. That's not a tree stand, right? I'm like, no, I know this. This is just a piece. And I told them, I said, I don't even need this platform. It just makes it so much more comfortable to sit up there. But when they were totally cool about it, and when I went over, I wanted to know, I'm like, how am I going to get up? I don't want to bring sticks over because then that's more luggage. So I brought over Wild Edge steps. When I got over there, the PH was like, look, I've got a couple trees. Like, you have the only big trees over there are near water holes. It's like all the other ones that don't have a lot of water. Well, they're all small. You find these water holes in place where there's water. There's these big trees. So he's like, all right, I've got these trees. He would drive right up to them and put a ladder in the back of the truck and lean it against the tree. And it's like, all right, go ahead and climb. I'm like, dude, you realize I could climb this tree with these? He's like, why? When I can drive you right to him. So I didn't even have to use my Wild Edge steps to climb. They were infatuated with it. They wanted to know exactly how it worked. He was taking pictures of me, while I was in the tree. He was pretty interested. And he was like, I know this is going to work. I know this is going to work. And the thing that he liked about it the most is that I was mobile. Their blinds that they have over there, they're concrete, dug in the ground blinds near a water hole. You can only play one wind on those. Well, with a saddle, I could play any wind I want. And that was the advantage. Really liked it. I thought it was well received. Those particular guys, that particular PH, older guy, he's not getting in a saddle because he only hunts from the foot. He does not sit water holes at all. The other guy, the other PH that we had, hunts in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, and his specialty is bush pig and blue diker, and both are very difficult animals to hunt. Very difficult with wind, very thick. It's one of those things where a blind on the ground is at a detriment because you're so close to the animals. The wind, and if wind swirls a little bit when you're 5 yards away and you're on the ground, you're totally cooked. If you're in the air, and you guys know this from whitetail hunting, if you're in the air, it gives you a little bit of relief, and he's just looking for that little bit of an advantage. So he wants to use a saddle in the Eastern Cape, which I thought was pretty cool.
So did you leave it for him?
No, I did not. I did not. I told him if he wanted one, I'd send him one, but I wasn't giving him my one and only saddle. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. I have 2 other saddles from 2 other companies. It's sitting downstairs collecting dust right now. I should probably sell them on eBay or something because I guarantee I have an original trophy line that I could sell right now. I guarantee someone would buy it. But I don't even use them. But I didn't want to give up my saddle, to be honest with you, man. I need it. We're getting into kill permit season right now for whitetails in these urban areas. So, I'm going to come home and not have a saddle. I know, and I'm pretty sure that most of the saddle companies right now, from what I hear, are pretty backed up on orders because, it's just blowing up now.
Well, that new Arrow Hunter Flex just dropped, and it sounds like they had them in stock and they were shipping them already. But
they're flying off the shelves.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But I guess I just figured since seeing you at ATA, I know you know a few of the guys from Tethered, so I figured you could get your hands on one.
I feel bad though too. I feel bad asking them like, "Hey, can you get me to the front of the line or something like that?" Just because I know them. I'll be honest, I do feel bad doing that because I hunt because I like doing it. I don't. Some of these guys some of these folks on Instagram and going to the ATA, you know why they're there. They're there 100% so they can take advantage as much as they possibly can on some of these companies who are just trying to get their feet under them. They're not trying to take advantage of the people. They're just trying to get as much free stuff as they can. I see that and I feel bad. So I don't want to. I try not to do that. So I would feel a little bad doing that. Put me in the front of the line, No,
But you're going intercontinental here. I mean, that's
yeah. You just opened up a whole new pathway for them to send them to Africa. Now they're going to have the next huge shipment. Like
that's true. That's true. And I going back, I'll 100% take a saddle again, because how are you going to pack a tree stand to Africa? What are you in your check luggage? You want to check another bag? What is this? It's a tree. Like, that's just, I was able to roll my saddle up and just stuff it into my luggage. And it was in my Predator platform was tiny, all in my luggage. In fact, both of them were in my carry-on. Really? I carried them both on. Yeah. Yeah. That and my the worst thing to take over though is the camera gear. That's like my camera mounts. I know you guys were talking about how much of a pain. I think, John, you said the other day your pack was like, with everything, was like 60 pounds or something like that, with cameras and everything else. I mean, that's the worst, man. Sometimes I'm like, man, I love recording the hunts, and I love recording what I do, because I can go back over and I can share it. But it is a pain, man. It is a total pain. And I hope it doesn't detract from my hunting. Once it does, I can see myself saying, all right, somebody's got to record me because I'm not doing this anymore. But I think the worst part was the camera gear. In fact, at security, when I went through Dulles, they pulled some of our stuff out and looked, and most of it was, they're pulling out any liquids and lotions and, shampoos and things like that. The other thing they really looked at was my camera gear, because they're like, what is this big metal like thing? I'm like, you attach it to a tree and put a camera on it, and they're like, what in the hell are you talking about? Like, what kind of idiot does that? I'm like, well, I do.
Oh, so, man, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, as far as detracting from the hunting, with our turkey hunts, and I'm sure you've seen the videos, and they're we're making an attempt, but I don't think that it's detracted from the hunting. I think, to be honest with you, it's been so much fun. I think it's the bows that are detracting from our turkey hunting, because man, we'd have killed so many turkeys with a shotgun. It's not even funny.
Oh yeah.
But it's.
Do you think you'd have hit any decoys with a shotgun?
I think at that angle, I think a few pellets would have hit the decoy.
He would have ripped its head off.
It would have had to.
That's a sacrifice I'm willing to take.
But I said it before. I don't know that I said it on the podcast, but I know that I've said it to people who've been busting my balls about that. I'm like, the pattern is just so tight with a bow. I'm not used to that. Even at that close with a shotgun, it opens up a little bit. God.
Yeah, and plus the other thing is too, you guys with turkey hunting, you guys are doing it in a group. Imagine trying to bow hunt and film a turkey hunt. Like, literally impossible. Well, there's got to be a couple people who have done it.
Yeah. I mean, for turkeys, I mean, we've done it. I mean, the one that I missed came in perfectly. The one that I don't have, John lost his glove, and
it's my brand new Hex glove. I didn't even, that was the thing. We're up.
They can only see your hand though.
Right. I'm like walking around like Michael Jackson. Someone was saying, like, here's John out in the woods with like Michael Jackson, But, I'm like, I got to have my Hex gloves, because my whole thing was I was going to sit outside the tent. I was going to sit outside the blind, like the Hex guys do, and just see if it was going to work. And here, it's not even my season. I'm up filming. It's Adam's a shooter. Frank's calling. His buddy Ernie's helping, film some. And then I was the main cameraman. And we get in, set up, and there's a bird gobbling. And I go to put my glove. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. One of my gloves fell in my pocket. So we're sitting there, we set up on the bird, and then he wasn't moving. So we decided, well, we're going to go, move in 100 yards closer to him. Like, you know what? You guys go ahead. I'm going to go find my glove before I can't figure out the track that we did. So I ended up backtracking all the way to the truck, going back around, ended up back up there. Didn't find it at that point. But I ended up back on the first mound, the first spot we set up, and I could hear the whole thing going on 100 yards over in the next, little ridge. And Frank's calling, the birds coming in, and then all of a sudden I hear, and then the bird's still gobbling. So I'm like,
But our cameraman,
the cameraman,
John passes the camera to Frank's buddy, and he's the commentator on Frank's hunt, and that's
okay.
I had to leave that in there because their dialogue is just priceless, and that's my every single fucking day, like being married into this family is like that it just never stops. So
Frank's a riot, by the way. Love Frank.
Yeah, and so you've actually gotten to meet him and not just listen to and God, the guy he just when I was wishing he was here. They're getting up turkey hunting tomorrow's the last day of their season, and he's going to be up.
I don't blame
to
him.
hunt. But when you said like the game would be like you had to shit your pants to continue, I was like, well, Frank can probably do that anyways. And then you could just admit it and continue on.
Yeah. Get your points back,
right? Hey, no problem. So, but anyways, he had the camera, the tripod fully extended. He's standing next to a tree. The camera's 6 foot up on the tripod, and then he's got it zoomed all the way in. And then he gets so excited, like he's actually been banned from hunting turkeys with Frank with a shotgun because
bye, Frank.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, just in the little bit that either you've listened to us talk or watched in the videos,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Frank can call a turkey from anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, son of a bitch, what are you doing? Like, I had the shot. Like, you didn't have the fucking shot, all right?
He was on his way in. He's still 60 yards out.
So he gets a little bit amped up, to say the least. And so he zoomed all the way in because his turkey was 500 yards away. We've got 22 minutes of video and about 13 seconds of the turkey because it's zoomed 100% all the way in as far as the camera can go. And then it's in the sky, on the ground, on a tree.
Perfectly focused on the bark of a tree. You could if you were a biologist, you'd be like, oh yeah, that tree's got some of this moss.
Hey, that was B-roll, man.
Yeah.
A whole lot of it.
And, so you can hear the audio. Crack. I mean, as soon as the arrow hits right behind the turkey, he gobbles, and he just stood right there, and I knocked another arrow. But, that one, we were no blind. I was just next to a tree, the cameraman standing there, just, at parade rest with the camera.
It's weird how turkeys do that sometimes. I mean, you can be full out. I mean, head net, the whole 9 yards, in a, under a holly tree, in the shade, and they see something and go, turn around and they leave. But then other times, like you said, you can have a camera sticking out, you can knock an arrow, and I don't understand turkeys. I'm not the best turkey hunter in the world. I love it. I absolutely love it. But not the best in the world. I take my girls out every year, at least once or twice to turkey hunt. And I have a very, very special little property 8 miles from my house. And it's a woman who were knocking on doors and found this lady, and she said, come on in. And I told her, I said, I'm really looking for a spot to hunt. And she instantly, I saw her face change, like, I'm not going to allow hunting. And I'm not the one who wants to hunt. I want my daughters to hunt. She looked at me and said, come on in, let's talk. I brought my daughter. Her and my daughter hit it off immediately. They became buddies. Now they're pen pals and the whole nine. Well, anyway, this spot at the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains, absolutely picturesque, beautiful, Loudoun County, Virginia. Like, you can't get any prettier. And it has these gigantic mature oak trees all through this old pasture, but the pasture is kept low grass, but it's huge mature trees in there. So it's like you would expect it to be woods, but it's low pasture grass. And then it connects to big woods. Well, those turkeys roost right on the edge of that, right over the creek and the pond there. And you can drive up, get out of, you have to be super quiet getting out of your vehicle because you set up literally 20, 30 yards from your truck. and the turkeys are just gobbled. They're just loaded with turkeys. Well, we were able to get one that came, and we decided to bring the crossbow this year, and we had a turkey at 50 yards, and my daughter wasn't comfortable, and I wouldn't have been comfortable shooting a turkey at 50 yards either. Even with a super accurate crossbow, I look at bow hunting in this way. If I was able to go into the future and get a bow that was, say, 20 years in the future, and get the newest compound bow that 200 yards, you could, just shoot dimes in it. It was a perfect shot, 200 yards every time. Let's just hypothetically say that. I still wouldn't hunt any differently than I do now. I would still consider a 30-yard shot a poke, a long shot. Not that it is a difficult shot, and sometimes they are, but not that it's a difficult shot. It's just that bow hunting, to me, when I grew up, my father taught me that you bow hunt so you get close to the animal. You have to be a better hunter to be able to get yourself into position without them knowing you're there to shoot them. And I don't know if it's better hunter or a different type of hunter, but that's the type of hunter that I try to be. So and my daughter, wasn't comfortable shooting that distance. So we got to watch this bird strut back and forth in front of us in that low grass under those giant oak trees for 30 or 40 minutes. And then it went off, and that was fine. We left, got breakfast, and on the way to breakfast, we saw a smoke-phased gobbler gobbling on a driveway, and I got video of it. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Smoke-phased gobbler. It's the first time I've ever seen a smoke-phased turkey ever. It was pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. Turkey hunting, to me, I can't say I like it more than whitetail hunting, but man, it gets my blood just going. When they're gobbling and coming in, that's that and elk hunting, man. You guys had a blast in your elk hunt last year, didn't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think it's one of those hunts or one of those experiences, it's like cliche or whatever, but it's like almost like life changing. Like, we said, like, coming back to whitetail hunt was like, how am I just going to be able to sit here and not engage these animals? And I don't know. I think it was just so far outside of like what we're used to, or like our not necessarily our comfort zone, because we got out there and accomplished our goals as best we were able to. We met all of the goals that we set for ourselves. Obviously we wanted to harvest an animal, but as far as having a blast, it's like now you just can't wait to get back out there. Now it's just a matter of, all of those things that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, saying like, we're trying to balance everything. It's like, well, I need to set aside, at least 10 days of hunting, but 2 weeks or till you get it done or whatever. God, it's just so beautiful out there. It's so big. It's so foreign. And I think maybe on some level that's what some people's draw to Africa is, because they've done all the things here in the States, and I can see that. I was in Africa for the Marines, and I have a different perspective on. I was just in a shitty part of Africa, so
yeah, there wasn't much hunting antelope in the Africa that you were in, I bet.
No. But
well, you bring up a good point about it being different and foreign, and also that people have a draw to Africa. I talked to. I've got a good buddy who is a fantastic bow hunter. He really, really doesn't want to go to Africa at all. And I said, why? I'm like, why wouldn't you want to go? He's like, have you ever shot a moose? I said, well, no, I haven't. He said, neither have I. I said, okay. He said, have you ever shot a caribou, grizzly bear? I said, no. He said, bighorn sheep? I'm like, no. he said, neither am I. I'm like, okay, what's your point? Let's go to Africa and Ghana. He's like, no, I want to shoot everything in North America first. And that was that's his thing. He wants to go and hunt everything in North America. He's like, why go somewhere else when I have all these awesome species here to hunt? And I can respect that completely. And if any of your listeners have never elk hunted, but they have turkey hunted before, I mean, it's like elk hunting is like turkey hunting on steroids with a 700-pound pissed off deer with swords on its head coming in ready for a fight or a lady. And you're there with a stick and a string. It's incredibly intimidating when you have a big monster mature bull less than 10 yards away and you can't even get to full draw. Talk about shaking, talk about adrenaline, and especially when, just like turkey hunting, when you hear them gobble or you hear a elk bugle from a distance, and then they start coming and they get closer. They get closer and closer. And you guys know, just like fishing, hunting, the anticipation is what is almost as good. It might be better than every other part of the hunt or the fishing trip. The anticipation of not only the trip, but the anticipation of the bite, or the anticipation of, at any moment, a Pope and Young buck could walk by right now. Well, when you have a gobbler coming in or an elk coming in and they're bugling the whole way in, that anticipation just builds for that entire time. And it gets to the point where if you can't control yourself, you're just going to fall apart, because they're loud and they're impressive, and your goal is right in front of you, and you have to make the perfect shot. And there's a lot of pressure there, but that's what makes it so absolutely incredible.
Well, and it's funny the parallels there, because, like, I think with elk, you have so much more from your perspective on the East Coast, or even from anybody that doesn't have elk native where they can buy a tag as a resident,
Mm-hmm.
easily. I think you have so much vested in it, where with turkey, unless you're traveling out of state and you're trying to, complete a slam or something like that, you're not as vested in it. And I think, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
you take it a little bit more for granted. I mean, last year we were like, oh yeah, turkeys, we can call them, we can,
run them over in my truck.
right. Yeah. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. And then this year, we put, a lot of time and effort into it. And John's over here rolling his eyes and, saying, well, I would have fucking made that shot, blah, blah, blah. He was breathing just as heavy as I was. He thought that the turkey was going to be able to hear him breathing. It was.
You know what? Maybe they can.
So, but at the end of the day, I was very disappointed, and I have an amazing video to show my inadequacies, right? But if that would have been what happened on the elk hunt, I'd have been fucking suicidal, I feel like. I mean, honestly. So
find the closest clip. I'm jumping off that bitch.
I mean, I would have been running through the swarms of bees that were out there saying, it's going to be natural. This is the way it's going to happen.
That's a good point, and like I said, it's like turkey hunting on steroids, because the exact things that you said, not often do you have to, when you go turkey hunt, are you going to hike 10, 12, 18, 15 miles in a day, gain 2,000 feet of elevation, literally have to be in the best shape of your life if you really want to push. Now, that kind of makes me segue a little bit into, a lot of the celebrity hunters out there, like the Cam Hanes guys and a lot of the folks following the Keep Hammering deal. I'm sure that if you are in the best shape of your life, it's going to give you a little bit of an edge to be able to, get up that mountain and get to that elk and shoot that elk and make a good shot. But buddy, if your two partners who are with you are in terrible shape, you can get up there. But if you need your two partners to call for you, you're only as good as your team is, right?
Oh, I'm hurt. I feel hurt. I feel that was directed at me, you know.
Believe me, man, my endurance out there is, oh, dude, it's absolutely terrible. I'm not gonna lie. I'll be the first to admit it. Especially that first. Did you guys notice the first couple days are the worst? Like going up, it takes you a little bit time to get acclimated, but geez, I never got acclimated. I never did, and I worked my ass off getting out there to try to actually, to be in shape. I mean, I was running a ton, but I mean, at 1,100 feet of elevation is not 9,000. It's just not,
Yeah, and see, we were only at 6,500 is the highest we were at, so we didn't have quite the elevation that you did. So, I mean, our first couple days were rough because
with like self-inflicted.
Yeah, overweight packs, and then just walking into endless field of deadfalls and blowdowns.
Yeah.
Self-inflicted is definitely the term.
And on those trips, I tend to, and I'm going again this fall. I tend to have a pretty light pack. The bulk of my weight is water, and I like to take if I can take more than half a gallon, I'll take more than a half a gallon. If I could take a gallon, I will. But it's usually right around a half a gallon. That's the bulk of my weight. The rest of my pack is very light food that I can do, that I can take, and then strictly survival gear to live out the night. Because where we hunt, the farthest road, the absolute farthest someone would have to hike into where I'm hunting is 8 or 9 miles, which is not, look, I can walk I'm in flip-flops right now, and I can walk 8 or 9 miles. It would suck at the end, but shit, if you've got somebody trying to, save my life, they're not going to have flip-flops on. They can get the 8 or 9 miles. I feel like I can survive for a day or so, not eating or something. But, I take the bare minimum survival stuff, but water is, in my opinion, even more important than bringing lots of food, because the hydration, it's dry out there where I hunt in Colorado. I'm not up in the Northwest. But where I hunt is really dry, so the water is so critical. And I've noticed when I run out of water, I don't know if it's mental or if it's physical, but I crash. I crash when I'm out there. The water was critical for me. But either way, I'm saying this like I'm conquering mountains, and believe me, I'm not. In fact, last year we had a guy, bad accident last year. We have 2 groups that go out at a time, 3-person groups. And my group, we killed a bull, and the other group came to help and help pack out. And they decided, well, we'll bring a 4-wheeler. And you guys, like you talked about, going over deadfalls and just the difficult terrain. And but he's bringing a 4-wheeler, and we were able to go on this one kind of a sort of a pathway / road and down to the creek. We decided to pack the bull. We had to pack it over a ridge, which was a pain in the ass, and then go down to the creek. And once we got it to the creek, we could get it on the 4-wheeler, drive up the creek, and then out this pathway / road. Well, the guy who brought the 4-wheeler, he came down, and he drove up, and he was right next to the creek and paralleling the creek. And it was one of those creeks with like about a 6 or 8 foot bank, sheer bank, but right in the bottom is the rocks. Well, as he's driving along the pathway right next to the creek, the bank gave out, and the 4-wheeler went right down into the creek and tumbled and cartwheeled and fell right on top of him. We're 6 or 8 miles out. So I had to, we all, a couple of us, we just sprinted, went over to him. we were able to just adrenaline lift the 4-wheeler off of this guy. His leg was mangled, and it instantly ballooned up like, Jack, we knew major emergency right now. I was able to get the 4-wheeler up and get it started, got it out of the creek, and put another guy on my back, on the back 4-wheeler. We hauled ass back, got a truck, and got as close as we could. And then we had to carry him up to the truck, get him to the hospital. Well, the little town that we were in had not a hospital. It was like a health center. And I air quotes right there when I say health center, because when we went in, they were like, yeah, his leg looks pretty bad, but we don't do x-rays here. We went, what do you mean you don't do this? Like, this is the emergency place. Yeah, we don't do x-rays here. Like, what do you know? Where's the closest place to get x-rays? They were like, it's a couple hours away. Like, holy shit, where the hell are we at? Are we still in America here? I mean, we'd already driven 45 minutes to get to this. Well, long story short, he actually he rode with one of the other guys. They took all our gear out. He had to ride back with that jacked up leg and a splint up on the dash of the truck from Colorado all the way to Maryland.
Holy shit.
Got back, shattered. I mean, it was shattered. He had surgery, the whole 9 yards. That was rough, man. But, you know, like I was talking about before about like the difficulties, the survival kits and stuff like that. My pack is pretty light, because in that situation, if my pack would have been too heavy, I'd have dumped it right there to help him to get out. You know, I don't feel like if I was going 50 miles in, like in the Yukon or something, I'd have a big heavy pack, big as possible. But on a hunt like that, where I'm coming in and out every day, it's super light. Water's my main deal. But in elk hunting, damn, I cannot wait to go back. Are you guys going back this year?
Not this year.
No, I think next year is the plan. Like, again, it's the this year I don't know. I think my man card, whatever, was pulled last year for going elk hunting.
It's called kitchen pass.
Well, yeah, I
you
like
burned
that.
your kitchen pass.
I like that better. But yeah, so I did a lot of things last year, and so my wife this year was like, "Hey, we're gonna go on a cruise with our whole family," and we went with John's family, for New Year's, and then we do a few trips, for weekend trips here and there. And on the way back of one of them last year, she's like, "Hey, we're going to stop and check out this campground." Oh, I booked it for 9 days. So that's, 2.5 weeks of vacation just gone.
Well,
for what? Family, kitchen time.
Yeah, well, you build it up, man. It works. Did you at least ask her on the cruise if you could bring a bow fishing rig?
No, and I think that's John's MO. I'm sure you listened with the last podcast. Is like, he's got fishing rods, surf fishing rods. I mean, hell, the last time I went to Cabo, it was like I called up the guy that John was talking to, and we did a charter of surf fishing with the guy that John messages back and forth on what's biting down there. So
nice.
And that is just something that, I love when we go anywhere, that sort of excitement. I think it goes back to the Africa, the Western hunting, the whatever. It's just like, once you get out of like what you're comfortable with, then it's an adventure. And I think that's the anticipation of the fishing thing. But here, whatever's on the end of that line, I've seen before, and I'm not all that excited about, for the most part, where John's over here just, shaking his head.
About ready to punch him.
Well, John, have you ever caught snakeheads?
No, I have not.
Well, the place that we go sika deer hunting, loaded with snakeheads. I mean, freaking loaded. They hit top waters like crazy, and you can bow fish for them.
Really?
Oh my gosh! In fact, let's see. It's next week. Next week, my old man and I, we got a boat. It's one of those one of those mud boats, like a long, real super long I don't know. I don't know what it's
shaft
called,
or
but
whatever.
for the prop, the shaft. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Super long shaft prop. You can go in like 2 inches of water, mostly mud, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we take that back, and it's all public land. We take that back in public land to go sika deer hunting. Well, you've got to go back in the summertime because and cut down pathways and places to hunt because there's Phragmites there. I don't know if you guys have the problems with Phragmites that we have over here. Really, it's everywhere in the world. It's Phragmites is a common reed, and they call it common because it's common throughout the world, and it totally takes over swamplands and waterways that where we have natural native cattails and sedges and things like that. Well, the Phragmites come over and just take over. Well, the sika deer love Phragmites. Absolutely love it. It's like 10, 12 feet tall, and they eat it. They live in it. They will lay down and make a little bed in it. They just love that shit. Well, when you're in a tree in the middle of the swamps and you've got Phragmites that's 10 or 12 feet around you, you can have a sika deer, which are tiny. I mean, if you're talking about a monster stag on the hoof, might be 100 pounds, maybe is 100 pounds. A typical doe field dressed will be maybe 50 pounds, 40, 50 pounds. Delicious to eat, though. But anyway, if you're in a tree and you've got the Phragmites all around you, and it's 10 yards away, no, 10 feet away, you can't see it. You can't see it to shoot. 10 feet away from the base of your tree, you can hear it. You can hear them calling because they're miniature elk. They mew the cows will mew. The stags will bugle, and it's like a long whistle. It's like a 3-note, or 3 different whistles that they're just a miniature elk, but they'll be so close to you that you can't see them and can't shoot. It is so friggin' frustrating. So what we do is we'll take that mud boat out. We go a couple miles back into this public land. We've got a couple spots that we hunt that are just Phragmites everywhere, but we know there's big stags in there. We'll go in and we cut trails to specific trees, and we found a couple persimmon trees that they like. But it's mainly where you find any dry spots, and then you clear them out early in the season because you want that Phragmites. You want to do it like this time of the year, maybe at the latest, maybe the end of June, because once you clear it down, you cut it with like head shears that you would trim bushes with. It gets all the way down flat. You've got these beautiful, trails and beautiful openings around these trees you want to hunt. By the time you come and hunt them in September, that Phragmites has started to grow back, and it's like that new growth comes back, and it's like a food plot. It is freaking awesome. And the deer, those little sika deer come in and just eat all through that, and then you can actually shoot. I mean, I've literally been, feet away from them, and you can't shoot them. You can't see them. It's so frustrating. But I'll say this about those little deer: I'll trade you 3 white-tailed deer, full grown, for 1 small sika deer doe, taste-wise. Every single time that I've given people a taste test, like, okay, here's backstraps, try them. You're going to love them. Which one do you like better? They pick sika deer. Every time over whitetail. Every single time.
Really? So
it's incredible, man.
So you piqued my interest about the snakehead. So are you going to go snakehead fishing or shooting while you're back there trimming?
Yes. I totally got off tangent, but on the way out last year when we went out, we took our bow fishing rigs, and we did do some bow fishing on the way out, took a couple shots, but we were more focused on let's get these trails cut. This year we're going to try to do a 2-day deal where we're going to go out and we're going to get the trails cut, but we're bringing fishing rods and we're bringing our bow fishing gear, because you're talking about up to 30 plus inch snakeheads, a really big snakehead, 10 pound snakeheads and up. And they are absolutely delicious to eat. Oh man, they were brought over specifically for food, and I guess they were released in a couple areas around DC, Maryland, and in those areas, and they have a labyrinth, which is like a primitive lung, so they're able to actually get up on land and cross land to get to another body of water that's close by. So they've spread tremendously. And throughout the Potomac River, right all through DC, that used to be a huge bass fishing tournament. It's a huge angling community, and like Bassmasters would come and have these tournaments there just outside of DC. And people were like, "Oh, the bass fishing's going to be gone. Snakeheads are just going to wipe everything out." But it seems like they've actually somehow been able to coexist. But now, if you want to go out and find a charter to go do bass fishing around DC, they'll take you, but they will definitely take you for snakeheads because the snakeheads are aggressive. It's kind of like they're almost like pike in their aggressiveness. But they hit top water and they're super, super spooky. I mean, if you come up on them, you just roll up in your boat on them and you've got a big snakehead there, it's gone, man. I mean, it's gone, especially if you're trying to bow fish them. Good luck. You're hunting them. You know, they're a predator and they know what hunting is. They're tough. They're tough to hunt, but it's definitely turned into a game fish around here, and man, hell of a good deed. I wouldn't eat them out of the Potomac around DC, but I mean that's like, look, I guess they say the Potomac, I almost said cesspool, which would be appropriate. The Potomac, I think it has like a C or a D rating on how healthy it is. I wouldn't eat them out of there, but the ones over where we cicadee hunt on the eastern shore of Maryland, where I mean it's all that water is filtering through that marsh, the marsh grasses, the phragmites, and all the other cattails and things like that. I would 100% eat them out of there.
Yeah, I'm looking up.
100%.
I'm looking at a picture. It reminds me of our dogfish that we have here.
But I mean, a dogfish is kind of like a burbot, right?
Like a bowfin?
They love the burbot.
Yeah, it looks a lot like our dogfish. I don't know what the actual name is.
I think they're a version of the burbot, and then if you go up to like Traverse City or like one of the real clean areas where they have, real cold, deep areas, they have the burbot, and they call it the poor man's lobster.
Burbot or eel pow. But yeah, we used to shoot the dogfish with I used to carp shoot all the time when I was a teenager. I mean, that's all me and my buddy Jason did. We'd go out all night long, just shoot carp, dogfish, gar, pike, every trash fish available.
How much fun is that?
Oh man, we would literally go out and we couldn't wait till it started getting dark. We'd go get the old boat, put it in. At that time I lived, just a half mile from the Muskegon Lake, which is our, big lake here in, our hometown.
Well, but it has a channel that goes into Lake Michigan.
Yeah,
so
that's one of our bigger inland lakes that connects to Lake Michigan. So, I lived short distance from there, so we'd literally paddle all the way around the next lake over, which is Bear Lake, which was connected with a little channel. We'd go all the way around Bear Lake one at night, then we'd go through the channel and we'd go halfway around Muskegon Lake and then come all the way back. And that's with
a lantern.
With a lantern. This was back before the guys had all the lights. We'd have a lantern and we'd have to put tinfoil. We'd have a lantern stuck on a 2x4 with a nail in the end. And there was literally nights where we burned it off and almost lost the lantern. So then we had to wrap the 2x4 with tinfoil so we wouldn't burn that fucker up. But we'd just go for
you
hours.
Can't make up a story like that. Like you literally did that. Like you can't make that up. Yeah, well, we had to wrap that 2x4 in tinfoil because we were going to burn it up.
My co-host is Huck Finn. You didn't know that?
Hey, where's your raft, man? How many miles was that?
Oh man, it literally we'd leave at like 9:30 when it was just starting to get the sun was starting to go down or setting, and we wouldn't get back till daylight. We'd go all night long.
Gosh, that's so much fun.
There was
Now, have you ever bow fished for skate or stingrays?
No, I have not done that.
Oh my gosh, dude! You guys need to come down. You need to come down, do a little. Come down, just we'll shoot stingrays and count as rays for a couple days in summertime, and then you need to come down to hunt sika deer in the fall.
Oh man,
it'll be the rays. Oh my gosh, that is a lot of fun, man. I mean, because you come up on them and you shoot one, and if you just tie it to a buoy and let the buoy go, and just let it go and just keep track of it, it'll go back with a pod. And then you get up to the buoy, and then you've got a whole bunch more to shoot at. So you can get a couple at a time. And they fight like crazy. I actually prefer to shoot the small ones. I'm not going to lie. Like those ones that are like car hoods, nah, I'll let somebody else shoot them. They'll just beat you to death, man. I like to shoot the ones that are about the size of a football, because then you can just pick them up. But no, they're great on a smoker too. But man, they're fun. They are so much fun to shoot. Absolutely a blast. And I don't know if you guys shoot much traditional gear, but we typically use trad bows when we do it, or compounds that will knock the weights way down. But it's all instinctive. There's no.
Yeah, no.
We're not. Yeah. I mean, it's when you're shooting at 5 or 10 feet. Yeah, at something the size of a bushel basket, if you miss it, you can get ribbed, and people can tease you, and it's like, oh well, I'm going to shoot it at another one.
Right.
That's a blast, man. But when you hit them, and you don't spine them, and they take off, you better not grab that line, buddy, because you're going to get a rope burn. You're getting a rope burn. So you either throw a buoy out, sometimes people use buoys, but if you want to go a little redneck, you just get a Tide bottle or something like that that's going to float. It's empty, or if you're really, really brave, you can take that line and strip a bunch out of your bow fishing rig and wrap it around a cleat. If you can throw like a flying hitch or something like that, if you're really good, and then it'll just yank on the boat. But I like to let them go, because man, I've been burned before. But they're a blast, man. They're a lot of fun. It's usually hot as hell though. Yeah. You're sweating your ass off, but it's fun.
My bow fishing experience is much like my duck hunting experience, which is like I see one or two, and again, it's one of those statute of limitations type things maybe, but I could have won the fucking yak and bass challenge with the fucking bow fishing deal. Because, whoops, they all look the same under shitty lights. I can tell you that.
Like, what, we're speaking of that. I wanted to tell you guys this story after I heard that. When I was a kid, we were fishing on the Patuxent River in Maryland, and my dad and I were catfishing. And he decided to walk upriver, and because my uncle's brother or someone was up there, and so I caught this fish, and I didn't know what it was. It was white and black, and these black stripes on it. I'm like, well, this is a cool looking fish. I had the knowledge, enough knowledge, even as a kid, to go, I don't know if I can keep this one or not. So I filled a bucket with water and stuck it in the bucket of water. My dad came back. I'm like, Dad, I caught a fish. It's a big fish too. I caught this fish, and it was all bent up in this 5-gallon bucket. And he looked. He said, throw it back. I'm like, why? He's like, that's a rockfish. There's a moratorium on them. They're trying to bring them back, and you're catching them trying to kill them, asshole. he made me throw that thing back. I'm like, and now, man, they're delicious to eat. And I'm looking back going, you call me an asshole for that. I was trying to keep that fish.
Oh shit! At least you got him back alive, right?
Yeah. It sort of swam away.
He wasn't tucked up under the front of the boat.
Statute of limitations. Right. Let's say this: there's someone who I know who's related to me, directly related to me, who, when he was a kid, trout fishing, he decided that the limit was a little too low. And he had his stringer, and he filled his stringer, but he was still catching fish, so he continued to catch them and filled his hip waders up with trout.
Trout's a trout.
And as he walked out to, as he kind of stepped out stiff-legged out to the truck where, I almost gave that away, where his father was, his father said, why are you walking like that? Did you fall in? He said, no, I've got a bunch of trout stuck in my waders. He told him, either you get in the truck right now or you go put all those fish back. And he sat in that truck, and then his father went back fishing. He made him sit in the truck with his waders, with his fish in them as punishment.
Oh, man.
I'm not going to say who that was. Dad.
Yeah, I mean, that whole statute of limitations thing, but I mean, you can't, like, promote some of the stuff that goes on or went on involved with this podcast. And I think I'm trying. I can't get, the problem is I can't get it on record. There is a very popular member of this podcast not present tonight that has the best stories in the world. There is probably one of the funniest bow fishing stories that isn't exactly a bow fishing story that involves John's dad and Frank, but it's like I can only put that like on Patreon or something where like I cannot just make it public record, you know.
Statute of limitations.
We're all you guys are the same way I am. I stick to the law. If I make a mistake, I'm going to turn myself in immediately, you know, and there are times when we are hunting in these urban settings on kill permits where, I mean, and this does happen, especially right now. This is the prime time of the year for these mistakes to happen. Our kill permits for whitetail deer are antlerless only, typically. Okay. And I mean, we're in May, almost in June. So not many people are hunting deer in May and June. And we have these permits written by the conservation officers. Well, sometimes it gets a little late in the evening. Deer comes in. You put that's why I use 10 power binoculars bow hunting, even from a stand or a saddle, because I need to be able to see if it's a buck or a doe. Well, sometimes you can put those 10 powers on and maybe not see. You're like, oh yeah, you're good. And you shoot a deer and it has these little nubs on it. And you're like, fuck. Well, you call the CPO, they come out, and you just say, you know, I'm either going to accept a ticket, just take it like a man, or they're going to say, you know, it's an honest mistake under these circumstances. And, you know, they say process the deer and we're good to go. You know, and that does happen sometimes. It's rare that folks that we know who hunt these kill permits shoot, you know, the wrong deer. Yeah, it is very rare, but it does happen. I mean, Taylor and I we've hunted a lot, and we've killed so many deer that we can tell when if it's a shed buck, even if it's a young shed buck, doesn't matter. When it comes in June, we can tell. Well, in June they've already got antlers, but you know, even earlier, May and things like that, we can tell body wise. You just from experience. But a lot of the people who come into suburban hunting, you know, don't have that experience, and it's the only way to gain that experience is to shoot a couple hundred deer, right, and to be that close to hundreds of deer, either to really 100% know low light situations. I know exactly what that deer is, but shit, you know, like we were talking about statute of limitations. Damn, it's like everyone has a story, you know, and I think what you guys want to promote, what I want to promote is, you know, if you do make a mistake, you know, just own up to it. You're not going to You're not going to die. You're not going to lose your hunting privileges forever if you make a mistake. You take your lumps, you take it, you learn from it, you move on. And, don't hide it. Just, own up to it. That's the message that I would give. That's the message that I would teach my kids and tell anyone who's listening to the podcast or anyone who asks me about hunting. If you make a mistake, take your lumps. Turn yourself in, take your lumps. It's all good. Damn, they come up with some funny stories, though, especially the ones where you don't use names.
Well, I mean, like this year, I shot that deer in the CWD zone, and we just got shit-faced drunk and took it home out of the CWD zone. And I was talking to one of my buddies who doesn't hunt, and he was going up for a 2-day rifle hunt. And I'm like, dude, there's different rules this year. And I was like, Googling like where he was going to be, and then I was like, son of a bitch. I was like, fuck.
I was in that area.
I totally did what I'm telling you not to do. So then I called Frank, and Frank's like, you didn't shoot it there. I'm like, fucking yes, I did. Like, I can't not, and he's like, well, who knows? And I'm like, well, fucking I have a platform to, and I'm trying to be as open as possible, because I'm not the greatest hunter in the world. I mean, I'm in there running for the world's worst bow hunter, it turns out. So it's it's not like I'm worried about people like looking for my fucking Honda Element parked somewhere. It's I'm just a regular guy. So I'm saying, yeah, hey, I shot this buck. I'm fucking excited about it. And then, well, fuck, I just broke the rules. So I called up the CO, and I didn't realize it until right now as I'm thinking back about this, because what I was thinking about during the whole podcast was, when you took your daughter for the permission for turkeys, I'm like, my fucking daughter will wow the shit off anybody. I can tell you what, she'll tell you that a girl turkey goes yelp yelp yelp, and a fucking boy turkey goes gobble gobble gobble, and I can get permission anywhere now, it turns out. And I didn't realize it, but I packed up my daughter and went and grabbed the buck, and I took it to the station and said, hey, this is what the deal is. And I got people that didn't really know that what they were doing at the thing, and they just let me take it back out of the zone again. But I had all the proper documentation. But it's like exactly what you're saying is like, in no way was it my intention to be like,
you're going to break the law.
I'm going to break the rules. And then once I realized I did, it would have been very easy for me to be like, it was fine.
No one's going to know.
No one's going to know. But that's the whole, from my upbringing, from the Marines, from everything, is like, you fucking do the right thing even when nobody's looking, and then things start to fall in your favor. It's funny how it works that way, but it's like if you're a stand-up person, like it kind of turns out okay for you generally.
And that's the definition of integrity. It's doing the right thing even when it doesn't matter. When no one else knows, when it doesn't matter to anyone else, if you do the right thing, no matter what, that is integrity. And I think that's inherent in the hunting culture, right? I think that's just the people who I grew up with, the hunters who I looked up to growing up, they had integrity. And I can't even say it was the hunters. It was the people who I grew up with. And I was very fortunate. My father and my grandparents, they hadn't, my whole family, they have integrity. And I was lucky enough to be able to try to emulate that. I can only try to do as well as they've done. But man, that integrity is critical. And like you said, you brought your daughter, and she's probably too young at that point to she won't remember that, but you'll tell the story later on, and that story, the message that goes back to her is that my dad had integrity. He came back. He made a mistake. He came back and tried to make it right. And that's what's important. that is absolutely critically important to, our heritage as hunters and raising our kids that way too. That's just, I think it's critical.
So, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about from the fucking onset of this whole thing is, I completely understand like what you're saying, with your children and the whole crossbow fetish that you have. But are your
it is a dirty fetish, isn't it?
are your John's over here going, Jesus Christ,
what an asshole. Well, John, I'm not busting you on your fetishes that you told me about at ATA when all those girls came up and they were talking about paying you money for the stuff that you do, and I said no, I don't want to see that. Like I'm not busting your balls for that.
But
what was it? The stripping with the leather? No, never mind. Anyway, I'm sorry, Adam. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I got to deal with those texts on a daily basis, and Instagram DMs. I'm like, I know it, but you need to, John B121 on Instagram.
Slide into his DMs, not mine.
Not me. I know he said he doesn't check his Facebook, but he's all over his own Instagram. But from that traditional standpoint, you grew up with some pretty hardcore mentors, and it looks like from the traditional community, and to start from traditional, and then are they, does that resonate with you saying like, okay, this is the way that I was taught and this is the way that I'm teaching my girls? And then one of the things I listened to on Ronell's podcast, and it like, I don't know if you listened to the podcast about the biologist that was attacked by the grizzly. And one badass chick, she's more of a man than probably 99% of the men out there.
Mm-hmm.
As far as her like grit to be like, well, grizzly just cracked my skull, and I'm gonna walk back the 2 or 5 miles or whatever it is to the truck, and it's fine. It's fine. But what the statistic that they said is that, like, the majority of women hunters didn't have a brother or anything like that. And what they're alluding to is that the dads felt like they had to, that was if they were going to have a hunting buddy, it was going to be their daughter versus the other way around. If they had a brother, then, my wife is, it's one boy, one girl. She's the oldest. She was never involved in hunting until she was, 25 years old or whatever. And my brother-in-law's, been involved since day one. So for you, is the crossbow that way to get them involved as well? Or, I'm just thinking of like, how do you view it versus like, how do you think your mentors would view the crossbow thing? And like,
yeah, no, I hear what you're getting at. I taste what you're cooking. I and my mentors would look at this situation and do look at the situation of me shooting a crossbow, especially with my family, with my daughters, as hell yeah, great job. You're getting them involved, you're exposing them, and then let them decide what they want to do later on. My 10-year-old daughter said to me when we came back, she said, Dad, I want a vertical bow this year. Can you get me one? Nah, she's probably asleep now. I can tell her. Well, her birthday's on Sunday, and for her birthday on Sunday, so she has no problem shooting a gun, shooting a crossbow. It was the more of the introduction. I felt as though the introduction to hunting and to archery was better to do it with a crossbow at a young age, because my kids started hunting at 8, and I knew they wouldn't have the strength to draw back 40 plus pounds at 8 years old. I wanted to get them involved, early. I thought I feel for my children, different for all kids, that 8 years old, around that age, was good for them. And if they weren't strong enough to pull back a bow, whether it's trad bow or compound, well, I want them to be archers. So I said crossbow, next best thing. And that's how I really got into crossbow hunting, with my kids. Now, it's just like John, you talked about, hell, you fish more than you hunt. I'm not prejudiced on different ways to hunt or different ways to fish or anything like that. I would prefer my favorite way to go and hunt any animal would be to take one of my longbows or one of my recurves and hunt specifically, spot and stalk. But, we talked about it earlier. I'm a really busy dude. I don't have the time, and my kids don't have the time with all the activities they do to be able to devote 100% to, okay, we're only going to do traditional archery and be traditional archers. I would love that. That's ideal. But I'm not an idealist. I don't want to just go, okay, we're doing full traditional. You guys all have to shoot traditional, and then you have to be proficient enough to shoot to hunt, but we only get to practice 1 or 2 days a week. That's a disservice to my kids. So if I get to practice 1 or 2 days a week with a crossbow, and my kids can practice 1 or 2 days a week with a crossbow, well, they're going to be extremely efficient at shooting a crossbow. I personally, just my opinion, this is my ability that I'm basing this on. If I shot my compound 1 or 2 days a week, I don't think that would be enough for me to be proficient enough to hunt. Some people are different. Some people can just, hunt, just target, shoot, once a week or once every couple weeks, and they're good. I'm just not that type of person. I need to shoot a little more. I feel like I need more intimate knowledge of my equipment, my body. I need to be able to shoot. So if my kids can't shoot more than one time a week, well, then I've got to make it a little bit easier for them. And I hate to say it, but as busy as we are, we talked about this earlier. The many things that we have going on in our lives, we try to make things easier, and I don't think that's always the best thing. But I would rather my kids hunt and have some type of archery, crossbow hunting, than to not do it at all, or to go strictly to gun hunting. And I don't have anything wrong with gun hunting. I'll hunt with a gun, no problem. But I prefer archery. I prefer that close-in distance. I mean, I think the point is that would my father, my grandfathers, and would the other mentors that I have who love archery, love traditional archery, would they look down upon me or my daughters for doing what we do, hunting with a crossbow, under the certain situation that we're in? I would say no. And I would say emphatically, I would say no, because we're trying to introduce our kids. We're trying to get them involved. We're trying to, that's more important than the way you do it no, I take that back. Not the way you do it, but the method that you use to hunt. I think hunting and getting involved is more important than the method.
Right.
They can make the decision later on whether they want to go, hey, I'm going all out, 300 blackout, subsonic rounds with my AR, and that's all I shoot. Or if I go straight trad bow, self bow that I make. And, my brother is in the process of making his own bows, and he's going all the way super traditional, which he's going to flint nap the whole 9 yards, make his own arrows, the whole deal. I think that's awesome, but that takes a shitload of time, man. I mean,
Yeah, it's a major.
He's got a family. I don't know how he's going to do it, but that's his goal. You know, I think you have to balance your time with what you want and be realistic with, where you're really going to fall.
Well,
I think that's the point.
And I think what's good about that, and it's hard. We have not really delved into the topic too much about crossbows because it's not anything that we're really into. But I haven't really pursued a whole lot of the traditional side of it either because that's kind of not who we are. And to be completely transparent, I feel like on one level, like we're not telling the whole bow hunter story, because there's going to be people that have either some sort of limitation and they're going to be using a crossbow, and it's going to be for all the right reasons. But our perspective, to a degree, is that it makes, and it's completely biased, but it puts more people in the woods. Maybe that shouldn't be. It's the shotgun of the bow hunter community. So, every Tom, Dick, and Harry that goes out with the 30-30 or 30-06 that they haven't shot in a whole year or since the last time they shot at a deer, now does the same thing with the $299 crossbow off the shelf. And so to talk to someone who, like I said, I can bust your balls all day about like it's your dirty little secret, but from a traditional background, going through all that and using it as a teaching tool and all of those things are all the right reasons. And the traditional side is that, you can say, well, compound archery or bow hunting in general is more difficult because you're going to be closer and whatever. But unless you napped your own broadheads and spit the fucking sinew between your teeth and tied it on there and cut the willow and burned it and did the whole thing, there's always going to be somebody that's going to shoot a bigger buck, that's going to fucking make their own shit, that's going to, have done it a harder way than you did. So the whole, and I think it goes back to social media. I think like what you were talking about is that, your mentors would totally say, yeah, get them involved any way you could. And at the time, these were the tools that we had, and this is what we knew. So this is the way that we did it. And going back, we had we can do anything we want to in this country, however we want to. So why not give them every opportunity?
Right. And like, I don't care for crossbows, whatever. I mean, maybe if I shot one, I'd start, liking it like you do, but but like when we were growing up, obviously they weren't legal. So, so that wasn't an opportunity. What had it been legal, we probably would have, our dads, because we couldn't legally start hunting until we're 12. And that's probably part of the reason Michigan, I don't know the exact reason why, but other states, you can start hunting at 8 years old or whatever. But back when we started, we had to be 12 years old to start bow hunting. And then it was 14 years old in the state of Michigan to start gun hunting. Well, at 12 years old, we were getting to the point where we could, draw a bow back that could be legal or lethal, lethal enough to kill a deer. But, now with a crossbow, you could definitely have a lethal, ethical killing machine for someone that's, 8, 10, 12 years old.
4 years old. I mean,
right.
I've seen some of these hunting shows, the kids are 4 years old. Now, look, they're not my kids, so I'm not going to comment on that. My kids, like I said earlier, 8 years old, that was, and you know what? I still feel like that. God, it's young, and with crossbows, Adam, you said something earlier that that kind of resonated, and you said, because this was, and that's based on, from what I said, it was based on the previous laws about crossbows. Like, you had to have some type of an injury or a disability in order to use a crossbow. Okay, so let's put that into a kid's hands. Well, if a kid isn't strong enough to pull back a bow, does that mean they can't participate in the bow hunting season?
Oh yeah, and I totally get it. You know, our I mean, if you obviously have been following the podcast, and you know, we appreciate that, but the thing is that, like, with our youth season in Michigan being taken over by the dads, and
what do you mean by that?
Well,
we have in Michigan, we have an early season for youth. And
it's any weapon.
And it's any weapon, depending on private or
same
public.
In Virginia.
And so, you know, and it's, I think we actually talked about it with
Wes. Yeah, from the Release podcast, and then with the guys from Pennsylvania too.
Yeah, I think I missed that.
But so, you know, I mean, but a lot of it's kind of like a double-edged sword, I think, anyway, where some kids go out and their dad's done all the homework. They, like, you know, they know this buck. Here's his monster buck, and he's patterned. Now he's got his, you know, southern pattern, and they go out, and it's a week or whatever it is, 2 weeks.
September 15th. It's the opening day of small game.
Yeah, so you're talking 2 weeks before the opener, you know, the regular archery opener, and they go out and, you know, these kids go out one day, shoot a monster buck, probably biggest buck they'll ever shoot in their life, and then it's either got them hooked, or it's got them to the point, like, well, they're let down. They're
jaded.
Yeah. You know, so it's like, it's kind of a double-edged sword for me. I one time took my son, we never killed anything. I just took him out. I'm like, hey, you want to go hunting? You know, just to get out and do it. But it wasn't like I'd went out and scouted this area and had this big buck pattern. It was nothing like that. It was just like, let's go hunt. And, but then after that, it's like, you know, you're 12 years old, you take your hunter safety, we're going to go and hunt the way I started hunting, same way, you know, get up a tree stand.
And so for me, I think that's the thing, is like, it's a great discussion, and it's Pandora's box, because in a day and age, like, where the first sick deer I ever saw was somebody posted it up, a picture, and then it was just like, why would you shoot that 80-pound, 75-pound spike, you Bambi killer, blah, blah, blah. And this was in a closed group of, like, legit hunters that had never seen, you know, that species of deer before. But you want to talk about, like, new hunter recruitment, hunter numbers declining, all of these things. You know, that's why I was heading down that path, is saying, like, I completely respect, like, your answer, the way that you talked about it and the whole thing, because I completely get that. But I think everything is so fucked up here in Michigan with our rules, mindset, hunters, pressure, competition, that, you know, personally, I'm jaded, you know. That's the thing.
Talk about, you killed 2 bucks this year.
Yeah, fuck, and I know, and I'm a fucking hypocrite, because
we talk about, you know,
give me 1 buck tag, and I'll
give us 1 buck tag, and then this clown shoots 2.
You know, and I was told today, and I'm a fucking complete asshole, like, on the podcast, outside of work, the whole thing, like,
welcome to the club, buddy.
Tell it the way that it is, and you know, I fucking put a sign on the door when I was fucking 20 years old or something like that. That said, I have enough friends. I don't need you. If you don't like me, fuck off. Like, that's the way that I completely live my life, because I don't have time. We've discussed it. Like, I don't have time to piss around with like trying to please people. I really don't care. But that's
look. We have a finite, window of time that we're here. So I could going back to like crossbows versus trad. I could totally get all my kids say you're only shooting trad bows, and and then maybe they burn out and then they don't like it. I don't want to take that risk, and so we only have a finite time, and you just like you said, I have my friends, I'm doing my thing, I'm going to move on, and you have to live your life now because we only have one.
Oh, for sure. But that's what I said. Like, ultimately is self-awareness. And so I know that I'm a hypocrite because I killed 2 bucks this year, and but they allowed me to. And the second one just happened to be the biggest buck I've killed in Michigan. And I don't know I'd have had that opportunity, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world because I killed those bucks with my brothers, and that was more important to me. The smaller buck was more important to me than the second one. But
because you were with your brothers?
My one brother killed a buck in the morning. I missed a buck in the morning. And then my brother, who doesn't hunt, and he hunts, but it is a way to get off of work. It's a deer camp experience. It's a
shit show?
No, I mean, he is like he's
It's
there.
it's
a vacation.
Vacation.
He wants the experience.
And, I don't blame him.
And he's killed that was the second deer he's ever killed with a bow. And those 2, killed deer in the morning, and I missed, and I felt like completely like let down because like we've never. With a rifle, killed deer all on the same day, let alone, with a bow. And, for one of my brothers.
Done it, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so in the evening, a deer that was legal for the area we were hunting come in. He read the script that I had set up, and I shot and killed him. And, that was the coolest day for our family. The only thing that would have been better is my sister killed one on that day too. And, to be honest, but like it was awesome. And I would trade that buck for the buck that I killed, later, but it was more about the experience. And so,
and sharing with your family, right?
Right. I mean, it doesn't really matter. And that whole, I think that encompasses more of the hunter mentality versus the killer mentality. I don't know. I mean,
so you bring up a really good point, and I've never actually talked to anyone about this. So when Taylor and I, with Hunt Urban and with all these deer that we take out of the herd in these super, super overpopulated areas. Okay, it becomes not a job, right? But it's like, we're individuals, so we don't always hunt together. A lot of times we're hunting solo. You shoot a deer by yourself, it's not the same as if you shot it on the special opening day weekend that is tradition with your family and all of your buddies and your brothers and your father and your families around, and everyone gets to celebrate over. It's totally different when you shoot a deer during a family traditional hunt than it is if you're going out in July and at 10 o'clock at night you finally recover your deer because it gets dark at 9:30. And you recover your deer at 10 o'clock, and you get home at 11:30, and you're butchering a deer until 1 or 2 in the morning by yourself. It's a job at that point, and it's glamorous to say, yeah, I shot a 180-inch buck, or I shoot a 70 deer a year, or I do this and that. what's really glamorous, I think, internally, is when you share it with your friends, you share it with your family, you share it with your brothers, you share it with your best buddies. Those are the most beautiful moments in hunting. That's where hunting came from, and that's where with my family, what I'm trying to do with my family. Like I said earlier, I can have them jaded on this is the only way you're allowed to hunt, or I can say you can hunt any way you want, because opening day of gun season, we're all going out with bows. If you want to take a rifle, you're more than welcome. You want to take a muzzleloader, crossbow, I don't care. You want to take a compound, you want to take a trad bow, no problem. We're all hunting. And then we get to all bring that together as a family. But I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I've been thinking about that for a long time. There's one guy who's in he's in a culling organization in the DC area. A good friend of mine. I love this guy. He's actually a former director with the CIA. He has killed, and I'm not shitting you, it's documented, I have all the data, 650 deer with a bow in the past 10 years. 650 deer with a bow in 10 years. All legal, 100% legal, all on kill permits or his own tags that he's bought, because we have unlimited tags that we can buy. It's just $18 and you get 6 more antlerless tags. I just wonder, and I love the guy to death, I just wonder, is he still getting the joy out of it?
That's a lot.
See, I don't think that, though. I mean,
let me say this.
I was saying, is he chasing something, or is he fighting demons? I mean,
maybe. I mean, he's, like I said, he was former director with the CIA government agency, and he fought demons. He's fought terrorist demons for the past few decades. So yeah, I'm sure he has. Hell of a guy, and you wouldn't know it, but I mean, he's lethal, man. He's legit. But I just wonder if he's got to be enjoying it, but it's not the same. And he still goes. He's got a place in Texas that he bought a place in Texas, and that's where he goes with his family to go hunt. And he's still hunting down there, But it's like, I don't know. I don't know if he's getting the same enjoyment that you got out of that buck that you shot that evening when your other brothers had shot their deer earlier in the day. Is he getting that same enjoyment? Probably not, especially by himself, 100% by himself. No one's there. He shoots the deer. He field dresses it. He loads it in his truck by himself. He goes home, butchers it by himself, or gives it away. I wonder about that, man. I think, if there's anything in hunting that I would want to save, it wouldn't be necessarily the type of hunting we do. It would be the traditions and the family, the camaraderie. That's what I would want to save. The most productive times that I've ever hunted in my life, when I say productive, I mean numbers of deer when I'm culling deer and things like that. Most productive times has been when I'm doubled up with a teammate, a friend, a hunting partner, Taylor, and another guy, Kevin, that I used to hunt with a lot. I mean, when we hunted together, we were the most productive, having that hunting partner. And I think the production was only a byproduct of the enjoyment that we had, the fun that we have. I mean, I can remember just a handful of the deer that I've killed, in the culling organization. Cause you're culling, it's numbers. You're just racking numbers up. I can remember a handful of them if I just start thinking about them, but I can remember hundreds and hundreds of stories of times that I've had with these guys that are buddies of mine that I'll never forget, that are just a blast. I think that's what I want my kids. I'm trying to get their friends involved in hunting and their friends' parents involved, because I want my kids to have that. Because look, in my opinion, hunting is not killing. You guys, I know you guys. You're not. It's like, oh yeah, I killed, I win. It's not that. It's, you just said your favorite buck, Adam, was the one that you shared with your family. That's what it's about. It's about sharing and not bragging, but sharing and enjoying it with each other. That's what hunting's about, and eating it. By the way, damn, it's delicious.
Well, and here's the problem that we have here right now is that, Billy, I could talk to you for ever and a day, and we definitely need to do this again. We're running up on 2 hours here, and so I want to, yeah, but that's the beauty of starting it, from as soon as you get on the line.
Yeah, for real.
You get that. And to be honest with you, I'm like, I have like 1/3 of a beer. John has no beer in the garage, so I gotta bring this thing to a close. But what I want to end with is I'm going to start with John, and then I want to go to you, Billy. I may bounce that back to you, and then I'll finish, and we'll close out this thing. But right where we're at right now is I want to know, like, John, what was your most memorable hunt? Kill, no kill, quail, carp, fucking elk, whatever. And then Billy, and then I'll finish up. But it kind of goes back to what we're saying here is it doesn't matter if you killed something or whatever, but what's the most memorable hunt that you've ever been on?
Shoot. I'd have to say it's probably my one that comes to mind right now, probably because of turkeys, but my first turkey I ever killed was with my dad and I and Frank. We told the story on here before, but, it was my first bird. My dad killed a bunch of birds before that, and we hunted all day, and it was freaking, nothing going. All of a sudden the storm's coming in, and as soon as it started thundering, man, the birds just lit up, and it ended up 3 jakes come in, and I was supposed to shoot I'm supposed to shoot first because I had the 12 gauge, and where we just piled up in this brush pile on the edge of this field, I couldn't get my gun over to, there was a tree right in front of me. I couldn't get that long barrel over to where the birds were at, and my dad's laying next to me saying, shoot. I'm like, I can't. Shoot. I can't. And all of a sudden, here goes the 10 gauge. And he just rolls his bird. So I just jump up and run out of that brush pile. I don't suggest running with the 12 gauge, guys, but I did. And I got on that field. By that time, and this might be another thing that people are like, oh, you can't shoot a turkey when it's flying. But at this point, this bird was like 55 yards, and he was just getting off the ground, and I, put the lead on him right, and he went down, and I, ran out there. I'm like, I got him. They're like, go get him. So I ran out there, and he's still alive. And I'm like, what do I do? They're like, wring his neck. So I grab a hold of this bird, and it's just beating the shit out of me, and they're laughing. And as soon as I get back, man, that's when it just started pouring down rain. There's still pictures of us. We look like we had just jumped in the lake.
And so why was that your most memorable hunt? What
just because, and I was listening, it was just a jake, but it was my first bird, and it was with my dad and my Uncle Frank,
Boom. Yeah, memorable. I would take that all day. I'd love that. I would love to have lived that.
And then for you, because it sounds like from the onset of hunting till, if you say warthog, you shit your pants. There's been a myriad of memorable moments.
Jesus. All right. I've got one that comes to me right now. I've got a fucking million hunting stories, but this one comes to me right now because it was embarrassing for me. It wasn't too embarrassing, but a little bit. So my dad and I went out bow hunting, and I was a kid. I was maybe 11 years old, 10, 11 years old. And I was shooting brand new rage of a compound bow, PSE something or other. I don't remember what it was. And I had the Chuckett broadheads, which I think they may have fallen apart when you shot them. I don't know, but they look cool. Okay, so I'm sitting at the base of this gigantic tulip poplar. Okay, my dad is about 30 yards to my left in a tree stand, in a climbing tree stand, and he's like, he told me before. He said, "Look, it was early season, leaves on the trees and everything." He said, "These deer, they come right through this funnel. It was a funnel of trees between two big fields, and when they get to the corner of the field, they either go to the soybean field or go to the cornfield. Like they go to one or the other. But we're going to beat them to the field. We're going to beat them to that corner. We're right inside that funnel." I said, "All right, no problem." Well, like a dum-dum, I sat down against the tree, butt against the tree. It's difficult to shoot a bow sitting down with your legs straight out from under you. I learned that day. Well, the squirrels were all over the place, and they're just, and I'm kind of getting bored playing with my bow, twiddling with the feathers on my arrows and looking at my broadheads. And I look up at my dad, and I can see him, he's doing a motion with his hand like if someone was speeding and you would try to tell them to slow down, you put your hand down, like, slow down, He's telling me, like, fucking sit still, asshole, but he's 30 yards away from me. He's like, "Sit still, you dummy, you're on the ground." So I'm like, all right, I'm trying to sit still, and I've got a head net on and everything. And these squirrels keep crawling up all over this tree that I'm backed up against. I'm getting pissed off. I mean, they're just bothering me. And I heard this squirrel coming up behind me, and I'm like, "Oh, this fucking goddamn squirrel." And I turned real slow because, you're not allowed to move fast. My dad told me, you scold me if I moved fast in the woods. Slow as I possibly can. I move around, and I just arch my back as far as I can, and I can't see the squirrel. I'm like, "You little son of a bitch." And I keep moving around, and I keep turning my body, and I'm at the point where I'm like, I can't turn anymore. And just as I do that, I see a nose of a doe comes right up to my head net, and I pissed my pants. I jumped. The deer freaking jumped, and it was just blue, and I'm like, oh my god, it was a freaking deer right behind me. So you think my dad is up in a tree stand watching this deer walk right up behind me, and I'm sitting there facing the wrong freaking way, bow in hand, like no chance in the world, sitting on my ass, no chance in the world I could shoot this deer. It takes off running and runs and starts stomping its feet right behind him, right? And I hear him shoot. I'm like, whoa, he shot. Oh, great. He got one. I'm like, oh, man, this is my first real bow hunt where I had been on bow hunts before, but my first real bow hunt where I had been involved with a deer being shot. I am ecstatic right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he got one. I'm like, and I totally forgot about my complete ineptitude as a 10, 11-year-old kid. I'm just like, oh my gosh, my dad is a bow hunting master, right? So I look up at him, and he starts pointing. And he starts pointing in the direction that the deer was where he shot. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess he wants me to go look for the deer. I'm on the ground. He doesn't want to get down. He wants me to go look. So I stood up, and I start getting over to him, and I see him, and he's like moving his hands. And I'm like, oh, he wants me to go over the other way. Like maybe the deer ran another direction. So I start walking over, and all of a sudden I see white tails, and they're running away from me. Like, holy shit, what the hell just happened? And I look at him, and he wants to take his bow and throw it into the freaking bean field. He's so pissed right now. So he starts climbing down, and he's like, and this is pre-safety harnesses. He's climbing down a lot faster than I I personally think would be safe. And he gets down to the bottom and he's like shaking and he's like trying to get out of this climber, and he's finally he climbs back up the tree. He leaves the climber, climbs, like shimmies up the tree and jumps out of it and comes over to me. And I'm looking at him like I'm shocked, like what in the fuck is wrong with this guy right now, you know? And he's looking at me like, do you realize what you just did? I'm like, no, I have no idea. And then he realized, he's like, oh, you are a complete and utter neophyte, dumb shit asshole, right? My nickname. And he finally explains to me, he says, I missed the deer that you spooked. It went behind me. I missed it. They kind of did a button hook and they came back and they were walking right to you. All you had to do was draw your bow and they were 20 yards away and you could have shot. And I'm like, no. He said, didn't you see the tails running away? I said, yeah, when I started walking. He was like, yeah, all you had to do was shoot because you started walking to them and they were looking at you, watching you the whole time. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So we went over to his arrow and he had missed. He had totally missed. I thought he had killed a deer. I thought I was supposed to be trailing a deer. He had missed. Well, I'll never forget this because I thought at that point that I was the worst hunter in the world. Like I made a zillion mistakes. I sucked. I totally sucked. And my dad looked at me and said, it's all right. Plenty of deer in the woods. We'll shoot another one. He said, let's go up and let's go to the top of this hill. We can see for a long way. We'll try to make a stalk on the deer. Well, there was no chance. It was already getting dark. And we went up, walked around, you know, and tried to look for deer. But he took all the pressure away from me. And he said, you know, he just was like, yeah, plenty of deer, screw them, fuck them. You learn from it. And we went up and we walked around. Later on that day, we went to the local tackle shop and he told the story. And believe me, my cheeks were pretty red-faced. But you know, my dad was awesome about that. Where you know, he took me into a situation where he put me on some deer. I mean, I had a deer within inches of me. You know, at 10 or 11 years old, and then had another opportunity, and then. When I screwed up royally, just the biggest screw up I could have done, he was like, you know what? Screw it. Fuck it. We're good. Let's do plenty of deer in the woods. We can continue. That made me feel like, okay, it's okay to make mistakes. And shit, we know in life, man, we're going to screw up. We can't do everything perfect the first time we do it. So you have to embrace those mistakes and learn from them. And I did. But that's my most memorable hunt is with my father. And believe me, I've got some ties to that and second places that are really special to me with my grandfather and my kids and my wife that I feel bad not saying, but that one right there, that meant a lot to me.
Oh man, that's awesome because that's kind of like where I'm going like with my story, and hearing you guys talk, it makes me like think like, oh, what about this hunt? What about this hunt? Because I mean, if you're a true hunter, I feel like, and fuck, you know, all you got to do is look at the pictures from Frank's quote unquote wall of shame. You know, he's like, I remember all those motherfuckers, and you know, it doesn't matter. I'm not killed a big one, but man, he gets mad. You know, we talk to these guys that, you know, bed hunt and hunt big bucks, and we start to break down like how they hunt and maybe what we should change, and he's like, he starts to get pissed because he's like, you know, what's wrong with the fucking way that I hunt? Look at all the fucking deer I've killed, and blah blah blah. It's like he's a straight killer. It's you know, and so it's funny because like just off of your story, I'll tell you a story. It's not my most memorable hunt, but it's a most memorable non-hunt, I guess. Frank was camping somewhere or something like that, and you talk about like how your dad like deflated the situation and was like, oh, no big deal, plenty of deer in the woods. And that to me sounds like Frank, I mean, maybe it's more like turkeys or like whatever. Like he'll bust your balls and stuff, but he's real laid back, obviously.
Good dude.
But like, fuck, it was this one like Halloween. I don't know where the fuck he was at, but he was like, you need to hunt the spot. There's these deer. And it may have been even right around the time, like the first time I hunted in the area where I killed the bigger buck this year. But he's like, you need to hunt there. You need to hunt there tomorrow. It was fucking Halloween weekend. Went out, got in a fight, knocked this guy's teeth out. Fucking, I mean, this is no bullshit. Like, and
was there any alcohol involved?
Not a drop, and you fucking come back and I'm fucking just, and then we went to another party and got to another fight and I'm fucking all beat to shit. And, I'm sitting there and Frank comes home and he's like, you hunt that spot this morning? And I was like, no, I didn't. And he's like, why not? And I was like, I got in a little trouble last night. And he's like, did you go to jail? I was like, no. And he's like, did you win? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why didn't you hunt? I was like, well, I mean, I'm not quite there yet. Like, that's not the progression of my thought process. But, I mean, I guess you're right.
Yes.
So, I mean, of the whole like de-escalating the situation, like that, that's kind of that. And like I said, my dad, he thinks that I just demean him on the podcast because we didn't grow up like I grew up in a very privileged situation. I think, like, we had a big property to hunt. And it was always a deer camp situation. And it was never about a big buck. It was just about the experience of going to deer camp. And I think that's what my brother encompasses. That it's the getting away. It's the going up there. It's the, sharing the laughs and all that stuff. It's never been about the hunting. I mean, not until I married into this mutant slaying, fucking violating family did I realize that it was like about killing bucks and like the whole thing. Like, that was just, it just never was what I was brought up on. So way before there was antler point restrictions, way before anything, and my dad always hunted late, opening morning, and this is with a rifle. It's not with a bow. We hear a shot at 11 o'clock or something. And, we know it came from my dad's stand. And my dad had issues in the past where he shot deer that didn't meet our antler point restrictions, because he thought they had brow tines or this or that. And these were all self-imposed, and it was just you ended up having to do dishes or whatever. But, it was widely known amongst the properties all surrounding us. So my brother, who is up there just the good time Drew, my dad finally shows up and we're like, do you shoot a deer? And he's like, yep. And we're like, is it legal? And he's like, yep, it's legal. So my brother and I go down there, and it's the biggest buck we've ever seen taken off our property ever. And It was a maybe 130-inch 8-point, something like that. But
beautiful deer, just a beautiful, beautiful buck.
But we're in cedar swamps of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and this fucking deer, I mean, after 7 days of hanging in sub-zero temperatures, it was 197 pounds dressed.
Holy shit.
I'm probably 19 years old, and my brother's 16 or 17 at that time, and he's 300 pounds or so. And my dad kind of tells us where it is, and we are in at this time, we got to go. It's a half a mile. Where my dad hunts is a half a mile from our camp. And we didn't take a quad down there. We just fucking went down there, and you had to cross the creek and do the stuff. And we walked up to that thing and went, motherfucker. And there was a log going across the creek, and I thought my brother was going to have a heart attack. It was like unfucking believable. And we got back up there and we were like, fuck you. Just tell us that it's the fucking biggest deer that's ever been killed out of this camp, or that it's the biggest deer you've ever seen in your life, or something. Like, not that it's just legal, motherfucker, you kill them that are accidental, So that's what we were expecting, was something that was like, okay. But it was the biggest, I mean, as far as body-wise, and, this is just, the way that my family is, and like my dad is, and, what does he do? He fucking sawzalls the fucking antlers off, and they're hanging in the fucking pole barn. and that's the way that it is. I mean, that's the way that I was brought up, but, that was my brother and I going and retrieving my dad's deer, and he's, of the mindset or whatever, humble enough to just say, yeah, it's all right. Go pick it up for me.
So I think the biggest challenge that we have now, trying to share, it's difficult to share that, because you told me that story and I'm literally like sides hurting laughing, like, because it's hilarious. But if I was there, it would have meant so much more. It's like that joke. It's like, oh, you had to be there. So how do you convey that to people? That's a challenge. It's like that's a real challenge to try to convey the you had to be there situation, because God, you're telling the story and I'm like, I wish I was there, not pulling that freaking massive deer out. Believe me.
But just when we got back up, like,
I want to get there and laugh at your asses doing it.
See the look on their face when they walk over that ridge and look at it. Oh, what?
Yeah, and that's what it was. Is like we walked over and went, motherfucker. Like, and so we're a half a mile, and like we're like, there's nothing that we can do. It was like, oh, we agree. We voluntarily said, oh, we'll go grab it for you, Dad.
Oh, yeah. No, we don't need a quad. We're tough. We're 19. We're badass.
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing, is like I drove that deer back because my dad stayed up there, and I brought it to Frank, and he's like, your dad killed that, like, at your camp? Like, oh yeah. That was it's an amazing deer. It's a deer that anybody would shoot any day, and we just fucking saws all here, saws all there, and fuck slap her up there. And that's just the way that it is. And if you go to his dad's house, you go to my grandpa's, and it's all African animals and fucking zebra rugs and all sorts of stuff. But I think it might be that exotic thing because it's not what you're used to doing. I mean, my grandpa killed some really nice bucks, but there's not a whitetail Mount 1 anywhere.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know.
Just because it was, that's what we have around here, no big deal.
Right, and that was the thing. And I mean, like, if you go into my camp right now, hanging on the walls, I don't know, 125-inch deer with a metal tag from 1940 something, and that's the first deer that my grandpa's cousin ever recovered. And he shot much bigger deer, but they didn't get taught to hunt, so nobody ever told them they had to go recover them. So if they didn't die right there, they didn't look for them. And,
that was very common. If you shot something and it ran off, well, I guess I didn't get that one.
Right.
It could have died 50 yards away, but that was very common back then. And it actually, from what I hear, speaking to a couple of the conservation officers in Virginia, is that blood trailing wasn't like a huge thing when it came to deer hunting. Now, when it came to like hound hunting is a different story, but when it came to strictly like the traditional type of deer hunting that we know with deer camps and stuff, shooting a deer, and if it ran off, it wasn't common to trail that deer for any amount of time, any amount of distance. It was, if it didn't drop or fall within sight, that's one that got away. And that's, luckily we have a little better knowledge now.
Oh, for sure. And like I say, like, for you to say that you had a hunt where you didn't harvest anything, or I mean, you guys didn't even, it wasn't even a deer that you drug out or anything like that. And I've had a ton of memorable hunts, and I think everybody does, but it's always that one that sticks in your mind. And John's isn't even a deer, and it's not even a bow hunt, but it's just it's that sharing it. That's the common theme, is that you shared it with somebody. And I think, the way that the world is evolving, and whether it's, social media or whatever it is, I mean, it allows us to do that. And that's why I think video is so important, just in a sense of, we talked to guys that started videoing just so that they could see what they did wrong or what they did right, or kind of have a better memory of it. But, that history, that camaraderie, that is what brings us together as hunters. And, that's the common thread between those stories. And that's kind of what I wanted to, just kind of see. And, it's just an amazing culture. And, I know you, this is one of the rare podcasts where, like, I can sit here and drink 10,000 beers with whoever's on the end of the line, but I've had fucking 10,000 beers with you, and I'm like, man, that motherfucker. These guys,
in like
whiskey.
2 days we had 10,000.
Right, and so that's one of those things, is like to share that, you're on the end of the line, but like, I know who I'm talking to, and for us as hunters to be able to have a common thread of, to be able to share it with the people that are closest to us. And that's why we do what we do. And that's why this whole thing continues to go. So I love to be able to know who I'm talking to, and then be able to bust your balls about the crossbows and whatever, and pick your brains without having to feel guilty about it. You know what I mean?
I'll take it. Just don't tease me for my pink shirts or anything like that.
I got
don't really wear
pink and purple shirts. I don't care.
No, but you guys, right now, I forgot. I actually forgot like an hour ago that we were doing a podcast. I thought we were just talking, because this is this is hunting camp. What we're doing right now is hunting camp. It's everything that I grew up doing, or I take that back. When I was growing up, I was listening to my grandfathers and their buddies, and my dad and their buddies, and they were bullshitting and just talking, telling stories, and I would sit there 100% completely silent and just absorb it all and listen to it. And it was the greatest television I've ever been experienced. I ever been exposed to. It was the greatest entertainment ever. And that's what we're doing right now. And we're literally giving people what deer camp is like. This is like bullshitting, like what we're doing right now. I wouldn't treat you guys any differently if you were my deer camp, or if I was at your deer camp and we were there and we're hunting, and we're like, tomorrow morning, good luck getting up, because John, you drank too many beers per usual, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to be in your stand. Sorry about that. You're going to have to find the other shitty stand. It's like that kind of bullshit that we're able to do. I mean, that's what deer camp, that's what hunting from my experience, that's what it's about. And that's why I love what you guys are doing with your podcast, because you literally are who you are, no matter what. You're not gonna change who you are, no matter who your guest is. You're just gonna speak the truth and speak how you are, and treat it like a deer camp. And that's what I love about you guys.
Well, and like I said, I totally appreciate that. And the hard part is that, understanding, and it's kind of, it's a self-awareness thing. It's like, I know that I know what I don't know, and I know what John knows. And that's why I like to bring that's why this whole thing works, is because he has a completely different perspective on this. I mean, he loves fishing, and I tend to, like hunting better, I guess. I don't know. But
I love both.
But he's like, well, I'm going to fucking build 9,000 arrows.
He's like, you're the one with the deficiency, dude, because you can't see both sides.
Right. 100%. Well, we 100% need to do this again. I mean, if we need to do fucking, like, what do they call it? Like rhino pig, like piss my pants right now, I could totally do it. But I got to piss, and like, we need to do this again, because I want to dive much deeper into the traditional background and how it's evolved, and your falconry, Tiberius Wellington, your newest hawk.
Oh God, we do need to talk about 20 waffles too.
And that's 100% like where I want to go with the next podcast. But
all good, man. You let me know when, and anytime. I'm privileged. I want to tell both of you guys I appreciate your time. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. I hope anything that I've given you tonight has been helpful, but I just like to talk to you guys. I had a good time. Ever since I met you guys, every time I talk to you, I've had a blast talking to you, and we need to do it again before next January, before ATA.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, for sure. And you just give us some dates and some weekends, and we'll figure out what we can make work. Because
I'm good tomorrow afternoon. Yeah. No, yeah, that's all good, man. Like I said, anytime. I'm super flexible, so we'll just make it happen.
Awesome, man. And so where can people follow along if they're like, well, man, this guy was super interesting. I mean, I'm not really into the crossbow thing, but like, well, the rest of it's pretty cool. Where can I follow him?
Yeah, I mean, first off, Hunt Urban would be the first place, and then William, I think it's William _Phillips on Instagram. I think. Fuck, I don't even know. Seriously, I don't even know.
He looks like a little Mexican dude with a bird.
100% big ass beard. I look like 100% asshole. So if you type in actually Instagram asshole with a bird, I guarantee I come up.
Oh, I'm gonna hashtag that when I fucking put this podcast up. Asshole with a bird.
You can find me if you. I think I'm the only person in the world who follows 20 waffles on. So. Yeah, 20 waffles, you'll find something with me.
Well, awesome, Billy. I really appreciate your time, and it's been a blast. And it's absolutely zero lip service. We need to do this again as soon as possible.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate
it.
See you.
Shut up and sit down.